Hello, welcome back to my channel. Today I want to talk about the difference in the way we communicate as ADHD and autistics next to how neurotypical people communicate. A lot of times there are misunderstandings that happen between ADHD or ADHD autistics and neurotypical people, leading to frustrations, not understanding each other, accusations of not caring, rudeness, or us as ADHD people wishing that neurotypical people would just get to the point of what they're saying. These miscommunications can make relationships between the different types of neurodiverse people, neurotypical to neurodivergent people, difficult at times. So today I'm going to talk about 6 differences between ADHD, specifically ADHD autistic communication, and communicating with neurotypicals. And then I'm going to talk about some isms of ADHD and autistic people that might help neurotypical people understand us a little bit better. For anyone who doesn't know me, hi, my name is Sara Kelly. I'm an ADHD mindset coach, and I come out with videos every single week on everything ADHD and the isms that pair with having ADHD. If you're not already subscribed to my channel, I do come out with videos every single week, so please subscribe and turn on your notifications so that you never miss a video from me. All right, let's get into it. The number one thing that ADHDers and neurotypical people really have a divide on is our attention span during a conversation. Individuals with ADHD may struggle to maintain attention, and that is because we are easily distractible because our attention is spread out on everything. It's really hard for us to hone in on one thing or one conversation. So we might be talking and I might hear a vehicle go by and it catches my attention and I look away. And by looking away, it appears that I'm not interested, but that is not the case. We also struggle with very busy brains. And so as you are telling me something, I might be, without consciously realizing it, thinking about my grocery list and picking up my kids from school and the things that I need to do before I go to bed tonight. It is not to be rude, but it is a way that our busy brains work as ADHD people, and that can come off negatively to neurotypical people who think that we're not paying attention. Whereas neurotypical people can sustain attention during a conversation and follow it along, and they are engaged enough to not have outside distractions take them away from that conversation. This can cause problems in relationships because the ADHD person seems aloof when really their busy brain just is really struggling to pay attention. Something that you can do as an ADHD person is have a fidget toy or maybe even doodle as you're having your conversation, letting the neurotypical person in your life know that in order to maintain maximum listening capacity to them, you need to be multitasking just a little bit so that you're not distracted with your own thoughts and external stimuli. The second thing that ADHD people tend to do is we tend to be really impulsive. So we might interrupt you. We also struggle with our working memory, which means if you are saying something to me and I feel like I can add value, I am afraid at the same time that I'm going to forget what I'm going to say, so I might blurt out what I want to say at an inappropriate time, leading a neurotypical person to feel like I'm coming off as rude and making the conversation all about me. Now, if you are an ADHDer who struggles with this, the best thing that you can do is just be really honest about it to your neurotypical partner, friend, coworker, or whoever it is that you're having that conversation with, and to really try to stay in the present moment and pay attention to the person who is talking, even if once in a while you forget what you're going to say. And at times when we do interrupt, apologizing and owning it shows that we are validating that it is rude to the other person that we have interrupt. It's not always our intention to come off as rude, obviously, but it is still considered rude behavior to interrupt. So when you catch yourself doing it, or if somebody points it out to you, a simple, I'm sorry, I was really, really excited. I struggle with impulsivity and I was about to forget what I was going to tell you, so I did speak up early, creates understanding between you and the person you're having your conversation with. Number 3 is hyperactivity, and hyperactivity can absolutely affect communication. And this can make it really difficult for us as ADHD people to stay engaged in long conversations without fidgeting or doing something else. So getting back to making sure that the attention that you have on the conversation can be fully towards the person that you're talking to by fidgeting or doodling, so that you can stay in that conversation longer than if you were just sitting on your hands trying to pay attention, when really your hyperactivity is making you want to bounce off the walls. Number 4 is organization and planning. And how this manifests in conversations is we can be all over the place, because saying one thing may have us think of another thing, which reminds us of something else. And that takes us back to a memory of when you get the drift. We squirrel when we are talking to people because we struggle with organizing our thoughts. Again, our brains are really, really busy. And this can be frustrating to neurotypical people because they're struggling to follow our train of thought. Heck, sometimes I'm struggling to follow my own train of thought. Let me know in the comments if this has ever happened to you. Neurotypical people don't generally struggle with this because their thought process and communication style is a lot more linear. Number 5 is expressiveness. ADHD people can be very animated and expressive in how we communicate. We can come off as very enthusiastic and energetic, yet we're sometimes lacking that filter to modulate our emotions in communication. This can sometimes turn off neurotypical people because we can have this energy that is really this too much energy, something that I have been accused of a bunch with regards to something that I'm really, really interested in. As an autistic, my special interest is ADHD and learning about my brain. And I can get really passionate in conversations, and to neurotypicals, that can come off as being just a little bit too much. Whereas neurotypical people, although they can get excited about talking about topics too, they're generally a lot more reserved and even keeled with their expressiveness next to an ADHD person. And it's just simply that difference in balance between neurotypical people and ADHD autistic people, where our communication differences comes off as us being overly hyper, overly expressive, and neurotypical people just not appreciating that kind of energy on a regular basis. And number 6 is adaptability. Individuals with ADHD can exhibit high adaptability, thinking creatively and creating connections between seemingly unrelated topics or ideas. However, this adaptability can make it really hard for neurotypical people to follow our train of thought. Whereas neurotypical people may lean towards more conventional communication that again is a lot more linear. So now that we know some of the main differences between communicating as an ADHD or ADHD autistic and neurotypicals, I want to add my own spin and some things that I've noticed in my communication and in my studies when becoming an ADHD coach. Both ADHDers and autistics do not tend to like small talk, or when we're asked questions that should be in the realm of small talk, we can take those questions as a lot more literal than they're meant to be. For example, hi, how are you? As an autistic ADHD person, when I hear that, I know that the socially acceptable answer is, I'm fine. How are you? But if someone were to generally ask me how I was doing and I felt safe to not mask around them, they were maybe a close friend, I would be wanting to share a lot more information. Well, actually, for the most part, I am fine, but I am worried about this, this, and this, and I have this on my mind, and I would like to do these things. And actually, I'm not doing as good as I thought I was doing now that I'm telling you all of the things that are actually on my mind. The small talk pleasantries don't really fit the neurodivergent way of communicating. We are very literal. So even sometimes dry humor can be really hard for me to know what is dry humor unless I'm the one dishing it out and what I am to be taking literally. My partner and I still, after 17 years together, have this trouble where I will have to ask him on a regular basis, are you being serious right now? And he'll respond to me, oh no, I was just joking, or I was just being sarcastic. Things like sarcasm and dry humor often go over my head, but I love being sarcastic and I love dishing out some dry humor. I just don't always know how to read those social cues. And then as far as just ADHD in general, many ADHD people do not like small talk. We find it to be pointless. If we have something that we need to talk about or a conversation that is interesting to us, it's not that we don't like communicating with people, but the pointless pleasantries, and again, I'm saying pointless pleasantries, that's my view on small talk, is that it's just a little bit pointless. Whereas neurotypical people seem to be totally okay with small talk. Now, if you are a neurotypical person and you want to challenge me on that or you disagree with it, again, everything is a spectrum and we have our own brains and our own way of communicating. There's also how we were nurtured while we were growing up, where we live in the world that does dictate some of these social norms. But if you disagree with me, please add a comment, add your point of view. I love hearing from people in the comments. Now, this one is specifically for the neurotypical people because most ADHDers and autistics already know we do this, and that is anecdotal communication. A lot of times when someone is telling me something, like let's say they tell me that their pet recently passed away, and I actually did have a couple of dogs recently pass away late last year. A way that I might show empathy is to share with that person that I recently had 2 dogs pass away as well. It is my way of creating closeness with someone else by saying, I see you, I understand you. Sometimes neurotypical people will take that as a person trying to monopolize the conversation and make it all about them. So this is where asking for clarification when a neurotypical person is communicating with a neurodivergent, specifically ADHD autistic person, can be really valuable. Why are you telling me this right now? Because I'm telling you something that's really hard for me and I'm scared you might be taking over this conversation. And then at least the ADHD or AuDHD can defend themselves and say, hey, I was not trying to take away from your experience. I was actually telling you about my experience to show you empathy, to show you that I know how hard it is what you're going through. I understand you and I see you. Do you see how this little tiny miscommunication between the different ways that we do communicate can cause problems where really there aren't problems to be had? It's more so just learning how the other party communicates and shows empathy. Now, the final thing that I want to talk about is something called verbal processing. And a lot of ADHD people do this. We need to talk out our feelings. We need to have a sounding board, another person, sometimes multiple people, to talk out a situation before we know how we feel about it or a decision that we're going to make. So I might be talking to my partner about what I would like to do for a vacation. And maybe we're talking about going to Greece. We're not actually talking about going to Greece, but let's say that we are. And, as we're talking our way through that conversation, I might decide that I actually don't want to go to Greece. Maybe that I don't even want to go on vacation right now. You can see how a neurotypical person would be thrown off by that and think, geez, why did you hype me up about this? Why did you tell me that you wanted to do this? And now you're doing a complete 180. We're not actually trying to mess with your mind. In order for us to know how we feel about things, and to truly be able to digest an idea, It is way easier for us to have a sounding board or multiple sounding boards to talk out our feelings, to know how we feel about something before we can commit to that action or that feeling. Something that neurotypical people can do that can make it really hard for us during this processing time is to interrupt us. Because of our executive dysfunction, being interrupted can have us having to start at the starting line again, even if we were nearing the finish line. So if you are a neurotypical person and you have an ADHD or an ADHD autistic person in your life who is a verbal processor, please try to let them finish. And if your ADHD person is the type of person to go on and on and on, especially if they're ruminating on something negative as they're verbal processing, that is a time when it is sometimes appropriate to interrupt, to say, hey, I see that right now you are starting to spin out of control. You're starting to be really negative. I don't want you to get caught in this rumination, negative feedback loop. So I just want to interrupt this and maybe step back and we can do something else until you're feeling more emotionally regulated, because I feel like right now we're going in circles, not really getting anywhere, and it's getting darker and darker and darker as you continue to talk about this. It's also okay for a neurotypical person to put up a boundary once they've listened to someone for a long time when they need a break. So don't be scared to say to your ADHD or ADHD autistic person, we've been talking about this for a really long time. I'm starting to get mentally tired from this conversation. I need a break. And as an ADHD or ADHD autistic person, try not to put that verbal processing load on the same person only. If you need a couple of people to do that with, to verbally process with, that's totally fair. Another great thing that you can do if you're by yourself is to talk to yourself. I talk to myself all the time. There's nothing wrong with that. Or to journal. If you've gained any value from this video, please like this video and comment, share it with an ADHD or an ADHD autistic person or a neurotypical person who you love by sharing this video and liking it. More ADHD people in the algorithm will see this video. I also have a complimentary mindset masterclass for women who are late diagnosed with ADHD, linked in the description of this video, that goes over the 5 pillars to creating lasting change if you have ADHD and you struggle with your self-esteem or self-worth. Thank you so much for listening to this video today. I really enjoyed doing the research to make it, and I will see you next week in the next video.